Hello, good evening everyone. I, Dr. Dhara Shah, physiotherapist by profession and a part of Anshu Center, welcome you all on behalf of Anshu Development Center. This is our finale webinar and we have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Manoj Bhatavdekar. Let me tell you something about Anshu Center. Anshu Center is an adult and child development center, urban extension of Kasturba Health Society Medical Research Center, Varda. It is located at Villeparle West. Here at Anshu, we provide various services like adult and child physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, feeding therapy, counseling, mental health care, and special education. Here, Anshu Center also conducts online therapy, and we would love to share a glimpse of our online sessions with you all.
Hello everyone. The online session for my child has been very effective. Thank you, Mona ma'am and Anshu Center.
My daughter is studying in 4th standard with ICSC board. During my interaction, I have realized that she has mild attention disorder. I have took an opinion of 2 to 3 psychologists and they advised me occupational therapy. I have taken her to Andheri West and consulted occupational therapists but not convinced. Later my wife found out Anshu via Google and we consulted Dr. Mona Shah. After consultation, immediately lockdown started and we could not continue classes at her clinic. However, we immediately started online classes 5 days in a week and interacted many expert therapists of Anshu like Manisha Miss, Radhika Miss, Nishita and Dhara Miss. Friends, within 2 months, I have realized remarkable improvement in my daughter. She developed confidence and her attention towards work has improved. I would like to express our gratitude to Anshu, especially Dr. Mona, Dr. Manisha and entire team of Anshu. We wish Anshu team to continue good work for society and contribute for nation. Thank you.
So this is how Team Anshu stayed afloat even in this difficult COVID-19 condition. Moving forward, we have started this webinar session on May 23rd and here we are today. May I request Dr. Mona Shah, who is an occupational therapist by profession, head of department and brain behind Anshu Development Center. See, she also specializes in early intervention, craniosacral therapy, feeding therapy, diet planning towards a healthy lifestyle. So I request her to please take over and friends stay tuned. We are going to update you on new norms created by Anshu Center at the end. So over to you, Mona ma'am.
Thank you, Dhara. It was a wonderful introduction. Friends, here we are happy to share our journey where we are on the 11th event of our series. When I want to share our journey, when I think over the past, how we started, the pure motto behind it was awareness. Friends, awareness is like the sun. When it shines on something, it gets transformed. And we at Anshu, we believe that there is power in everyone to get it transformed. And the motto behind it when we were in lockdown, so to spread awareness amongst each and everyone. And we were so overwhelmed with the response received all across. We have been encouraged by a lot of feedback from teachers and parents. To be genuine with you, from the second episode onwards only, we have to upgrade our Zoom from a capacity of 100 to 300. And we were more and more motivated to give good back to our society. I tried to cover all the subjects and to share my experience of lifetime and the knowledge whatever we have by introducing all sensory integration problem and different subjects. I received a lot of response from all the speakers and willingness to serve society without any personal thing or for gain. It's just a pure sense of awareness. Friends, we tried and cover each and every subject which will help any parent to take and understand their child better, or teacher so that they can understand their student better, and that can be helped with a good study of any child. Even professionals will get help if they go back and visit our all events to understand their child better. Let me give you an insight on how our workshop and what are the subjects we covered. With that, we tried and give you one line feedback from each workshop, what takeaway you can have. Dhara, can you please continue with the video? So friends, isn't it wonderful? I'm sure you all will go back and see our YouTube videos if you have missed out on anything. At this point, I want to thank, first of all my therapists and team who has wholeheartedly supported this each and every event. They tried to give their best on whatever way they can help and organize this event. I want to give special thanks to therapist and Dr. Dhara, who is there in front of us, for making this video and helping us. I should not forget our parents who has been always a part of audience, teachers who supported us, at the same time all the participants. I want to give special thanks to my husband Amit, Without his support, we wouldn't have been able to continue so much. And his team from Spectrum Scan Private Limited, especially Vaibhav and Mahesh Bhai for all artifacts. Thank you so much for everything so that we could continue with this. So friends, now taking over to today's guest. As we know, friends, it is necessary to change a person to have change on our own self and to change the awareness about itself. When I was thinking of what could be the last topic of our seminar, and then I thought, whatever we do, the crust of our life is to have a well-being and mental health and well-being of our own self. And so today we have with us Dr. Manoj Bhatavdekar, who is going to give his insight on mental health. What are the myths and the facts? When we talk about any person and going to a psychiatrist, we have a lot of questions and queries in our mind. It doesn't allow us to go and approach him as a first choice for any kind of question. We have with us Manoj Bhatavdekar, who is an eminent psychiatrist, gold medalist from GS Medical College in 1986. He is practicing at Andheri with his private clinic. He has special interest in child and adolescent psychiatry for more than 20 years. He has worked at Parents and Child Guidance Center at Lokmanya Seva Samaj. He is a past president of Bombay Psychiatric Society. He has written many books. He is the author of a book on child psychiatry. He had received a Best Novel Award for his novel on adolescent with juvenile diabetes. Author of many scientific articles and newspapers, is involved in several community programs of the mental health in schools, colleges, industries, and community. A music lover, singer, composer, and lyricist, a trained facilitator of Osho meditation, I welcome Dr. Manoj Bhatavdekar. Over to you, Manoj sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Am I audible, Mona?
Yes, perfect, sir.
Thank you so much. So at the outset, please allow me to thank Dr. Mona Shah and her team for having invited me to be a guest speaker for today's webinar. And congratulations to her team for excellent work. Congratulations to her team on having thought of mental health as the last topic. All of us know that the World Health Organization talks a lot about mental health. The definition, the very definition of health is not complete without mental health. So it's a state of not just absence of illness, but a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being. That's what the World Health Organization says. We need to understand that mental health is very often neglected by people. If the body is healthy, people are happy. But very often the body is healthy when the mind is healthy, and the mind is healthy when the body is healthy. It's mutual. Actually, to tell you the truth, body and mind are not two separate entities. Body-mind is one unit. And we need to understand that body is the gross form of this unit, and the mind is a very subtle form of this unit. So today, I'm going to talk about myths which prevail in the society about mental health, about psychiatry as a field, about psychiatric disorders, about their treatment. And it is important for us to understand that awareness has been happening for several years. I have been into the field for at least 3 decades now, and I have seen growth in awareness. I've seen growth in the field. Mona just mentioned about sun shining on something and something brightening up. But let me also tell you one thing: when the sun shines too brightly, our eyes tend to close and we don't tend to see. So we need to understand that if you want to see something in bright sun, please trust that the sun shines brightly, and you need to keep your eyes open in order to see, right? I am reminded of an incident, this goes back to 1988-89, when I started my practice in a small polyclinic in a western suburb. And I used to practice just for 2 hours in the evening. And so it was the beginning of my practice. So I hardly had any patients. Most of my time I used to read. And once what happened was, there was an elderly man who entered my clinic and said, "Doctor, what's the latest time in the evening I can come and see you with my son?" I said, "My timings are for 7 to 9, and you can come anytime between 7 and 9 p.m. No. He said, no, you need to understand what it is, what I'm saying. My son is 25. He is under tension and I want to see you." I said, "So please come. My clinic is open from 7 to 9. I'm here. I come at 7 and leave at 9. So you can bring him anytime." No. He said, "No, but I would prefer to come when it's absolutely dark outside." I said, "Why?" "No, because I don't want to be noticed by anyone walking into your clinic. I have 2 requests to make," he said. "First, please allow me in immediately as soon as I come into the clinic, because I don't want to be sitting in your waiting room, so nobody should notice me. And secondly, if you can, please cover this board of yours which says consulting psychiatrist. So by chance, if someone notices me here, they won't come to know that I have brought my son to a psychiatrist. My son is still young and we might get him married sometime in 2 years. In case people come to know I brought him to a psychiatrist, who will give him a girl?" So such was the stigma in associated with psychiatry. I'm talking about the scenario 30 years ago. And today in 2020, I get a phone call, for example, from someone talking in a friendly manner saying, "Doctor, I'm referring so and so to you. He wasn't willing to see you, but I insisted that you see him. And I told him that I have taken treatment for depression. I got better and you also will benefit." Or maybe, "I think my wife's low backache is related to her stress. Will you please see her, doctor?" Or maybe somebody says, "I got your referral from a friend of mine whose son you treated, and the son is 10 years old." And there are many examples like this in 2020. People have not only started talking about mental illnesses and their treatment, they're approaching psychiatrists for treatment, they are referring patients, they are accompanying their own friends and relatives and the related people to a psychiatrist. And this is thanks to the awareness which has been created by mental health professionals. And again, I congratulate Dr. Mona Shah and her team for being part of this awareness campaign. Now, a question that is very often asked is, have problems increased or has awareness increased? People come very often ask me, "Doctor, have psychiatric problems increased?" The answer is yes. Problems which are related to stresses of modern lifestyle have definitely increased. Increased population, fierce competition, or technological boom, social media, changing value systems, economic crisis, several factors, right? Our life is not the same. Our life is full of stresses. So all these things, as I said, are adding to our stress on one hand. However, we also need to understand that there have been some disorders which have been there right from the birth of humanity. Schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, or developmental disorders, these have always been there right from the time human beings existed. And we need to understand that those with these biological developmental mechanisms, those disorders have persisted. They have been there. Stress-related disorders have been added to the repertoire, and stress-related disorders are increasing in number day by day. So the answer is problems have increased, and also awareness about the problems has increased. Better diagnostic tools are available now. More and more scientific research is adding details to our knowledge every day. Newer treatments are available. So many more problems are diagnosable and treatable today than were earlier. So the picture has really become really very optimistic. However, still so much stigma does exist around mental illnesses and their treatment. What constitutes this stigma? You know, when I say there is stigma associated with mental illness, we think in a very stereotypical manner. So there are stereotypes that we have. There are prejudices that we have. That a mentally ill person is like this. Something wrong with this person. This person is not going to improve. This person functions in a particular way. And that is a fixed perception, a prejudice, a stereotyped attitude. And that is why we tend to discriminate people with mental illnesses. So this has even got generalized to a statement that there is hardly any difference between a psychiatric patient and a psychiatrist. I've heard comments saying that the only difference between a patient and a doctor is the table in between. That psychiatric patients are mad and the doctors who treat them are also mad, right? Somehow, I'm used to hearing these comments, so I'm desensitized over 30 years. So even if you say that, I don't mind it. Maybe at the end of this talk, your perception might change if you already have that perception. Somehow, the world of psychiatry is often a mix of curiosity on one hand, praise on the other, and a lot of skepticism. Let me begin with a basic understanding of the difference between a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a counselor. I think that's the most basic question we need to consider. So who is a psychiatrist? When I say I'm a psychiatrist, I mean that I am a medical professional who has done MBBS and then a postgraduate degree in psychiatry. I've done MD with psychological medicine. So a complete understanding of the human body is a must for a psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist is essentially a doctor first, and then a postgraduate in understanding of neurology, of psychiatry, of humanities together. So that's about a psychiatrist. So who's a psychologist? A psychologist is a person with an arts degree. He's not a medico. So a degree like MA, for example. There are clinical psychologists, there are counseling psychologists. And a counselor is a person who does counseling. Could be coming from a background of psychology or social work, or there could be someone who has done some course in counseling. For example, I have two counselors working with me. One is a clinical psychologist. The other comes from a background of social work. Both are postgraduates. So treating a mental disorder is a comprehensive effort. Dr. Mona Shah is an occupational therapist. Dr. Dhara is a physiotherapist. So these are all the paraprofessionals who join in the treatment of mental disorders. There are several myths which prevail around mental health, about psychiatric disorders, about their treatment.
Oh,
Let's let's look at some of the myths and clarify them. The biggest myth, and the one which is associated with maximum stigma, is that mental illness means madness. Some psychiatric disorders have some symptoms which are not socially acceptable. For example, a person with a disorder called schizophrenia who mutters to self, laughs to self. Why does he do that? Because he is hearing voices which are called hallucinations. There is a biochemical disturbance in his nervous system because of which his perception is altered, and he hears voices, and he is not muttering to self, he is responding to those voices. He cannot help it. He really genuinely hears voices, and he genuinely believes that people are against him. So he behaves in an odd, eccentric manner, which is not socially acceptable, which is, unfortunately, it was called madness all these years. Or maybe there is a child with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, who's constantly restless, who disturbs the class, creates nuisance, is very impulsive, is daydreaming many of the times. So maybe labeled mad by other children. Or a person with a disorder called bipolar disorder, in which there are two poles of mood, mania and depression. So somebody who with mania, who talks excessively, who thinks he is great, who's irritable. So these are disorders with biochemical disturbances in the nervous system, which the person himself or herself is not able to control and is not even aware of them. Right? So let us know once for all, therefore, that what you call the mind is located in the brain. Remember that. How does this brain function? Billions of cells called neurons. So there's a nerve cell, there's a fiber at the end of it, which is called a nerve fiber. And there are nerve fibers joined to each other, but not like electrical wires. They're not directly joined. There's a small gap in between, a microscopic gap, which is called the synapse. So an electric impulse comes from one cell through the nerve fiber to the synapse. In the synapse, there are chemical neurotransmitters. So the impulse then gets converted into from electrical to chemical. And then there's another nerve fiber here. So from chemical to electrical again, and that's how a nerve impulse is transmitted. So the entire brain functions in an electrochemical manner, 24/7. Just imagine the complexity. Just imagine what all scope there is for things to go wrong. I often wonder, after practicing psychiatry for so many years, that I wonder how so many people are normal, right? Isn't it? Scope for everything to go wrong at so many places. So let us remember that the mind is nothing but a part of the nervous system. There are some centers in the brain, the limbic system, and several associated structures. We have this psychoneuroendocrine immune axis. The endocrine system functions in unison with the nervous system. The endocrine system is the system of glands which produce hormones, and the immune system also. So it's a very complex body-mind unit that we all have. It's like a beautiful symphony which plays all the time. And if one instrument goes out of tune, the entire orchestra is disturbed. So different neurotransmitters, chemicals operate in the brain in different areas. Different chemical neurotransmitters have different functions. There are endorphins, which are related with the pain. Then there is dopamine, concerned with the rewards behavior, reward system. Serotonin, which is a happy hormone. Oxytocin is that of love. And then there is acetylcholine and glutamate and gamma aminobutyric acid, all kinds of stuff. So these are all different chemical neurotransmitters which are in the brain. And there is dysregulation or imbalance in these chemicals, which produces disorders. It is nothing to do with madness. Let us remember also that many psychiatric disorders do not present with so-called psychological symptoms. They also present with physical symptoms. So somebody with a pain in the neck or a headache could have a psychiatric disorder. It could be tension headache, for example, which is muscular, and the cause of that headache is not in the head. The presentation, the symptoms are in the head. The cause is, it could be anxiety, for example. 40% of cases going to a general practitioner actually suffer from psychiatric disorders. That is the proportion. And as I said, if there are patients with multiple physical symptoms, then they undergo unnecessary investigations. They come to us with huge folders of investigations, reports, all being normal. And they've been receiving painkillers, they've been receiving antacids and all kinds of symptomatic treatment, which is absolutely useless with no benefit. So I hope now you understand that mental illness has nothing to do with madness. The second popular myth is that psychiatric illnesses do not get better. Let me tell you a story. When I got married in 1986, my wife is a pediatrician, also studied in the same college as me. And even till she got married with me, she used to believe that psychiatric illnesses do not get better. Okay, so these myths exist not now. Now, of course, she's convinced after staying with me for so many years that I'm okay and my patients are okay and everything is okay, right? But these myths, they existed even among doctors. You see, till 1952, there was no specific medicine in psychiatry. So people with major mental illnesses used to get admitted in mental asylums invariably, where the scenario would be pathetic. Patients would be tied down with iron chains, beaten up, all kinds of things, all kinds of cruel treatments were given to them. And in 1952, there was discovery of a molecule called chlorpromazine, which was an antipsychotic medicine, which came like a boon. It was a major revolution in psychiatry, and it is said that chains of mental patients who were in the asylums got broken because it brought about improvement, because it worked on a specific chemical in the brain called dopamine, which is responsible for schizophrenia. Till then, there was no specific treatment available. And this specific treatment brought in a revolution. Many people improved. They could be managed at home without hospitalization. People got discharged from hospitals. Then there came other drugs like anti-anxiety, antidepressants, cognitive enhancers, which are used for dementia, and so on and so forth. There are several treatments of drugs available for ADHD in children. Several other drugs came. And today we have several drugs in our armamentarium, which we can use to treat several disorders. And these are drugs which, again, have brought in so much of remarkable improvement in the picture of psychiatric disorders. The third Now, since we are on medicine, the third popular myth is psychiatrists give sleeping pills. You see, loss of sleep is a symptom of many psychiatric conditions. Just as fever is a symptom of several conditions, like fever can be a symptom of malaria, typhoid, of dengue, of viral infections, of coronavirus, whatever. So fever happens in several medical conditions. Similarly, loss of sleep can be a symptom of a primary sleep disorder, or anxiety, or depression, or schizophrenia, or a stress related disorder, a post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever. We do not treat symptoms, we treat the cause. We treat the basic condition which causes the symptom. So these are not sleeping pills that we use. As I said, they act on specific neurotransmitter chemicals in the brain. However, some of them have sedation as a side effect, which is very often initial. It wears off after a little while, and the desirable effects then take over. The next popular myth is that psychotropic medicines cause dependence. So if once you are on a medicine for lifelong, you have to take medicines. Again, there are diseases in medicine and there are disorders in medicine. Diseases have a specific cause. So once you treat that specific cause, it is cured. Say malaria, for example, or typhoid. You give an anti-malarial or an anti-typhoid medicine, it's cured. Or anti-tuberculosis medicine, tuberculosis is cured. As against which there are disorders in medicine, diabetes, hypertension, which need to be checked and kept under control, which require maintenance treatment with medication. Similarly, there are some disorders in psychiatry which are disorders and not diseases, which means there are multiple factors which are responsible for the causation. It could be genetic, it could be epigenetic, environmental, stress related, whatever. So these disorders are not cured in that sense, but they need to be controlled and maintained with maintenance doses. That's not dependence. If there is dependence, you have to increase the dose. Say, for example, somebody is dependent on alcohol. He starts with one peg and then goes to bottles. That's dependence. When it comes to psychotropic medicines, there is no dependence. A fixed dose for a little while, after the person is controlled, maybe we are even able to reduce the dose and keep the person on a small maintenance dose. So that's not dependence, that's maintenance. Remember that. Another very popular myth, I get several patients who come and tell me, doctor, please no medicines, only counseling, right? So there's a myth that all psychiatric disorders are treatable with counseling. It's a disastrous belief. A person with schizophrenia who's violent, or a person with depression who's suicidal, or a child with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder who's suffering because of his own inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity, or any other disorder with biochemical disturbances in the brain definitely requires medication. So what we do is we put the person on medication, treat the biochemical disturbance, bring it to a stable level, and then whatever counseling issues we tackle with the help of counseling. So these people are not amenable to counseling unless they are stabilized biochemically. Please remember that. Then another belief is why counseling? Why no medication? Because psychotropic medicines have severe side effects. Let me tell you, all medicines have potential side effects. If taken in excess, even water has side effects. There are two kinds of side effects when it comes to medicines. One is unpleasant side effects, the other is dangerous side effects. Dangerous side effects are very few, and the treating doctor is very well aware of the dangerous side effects. So some people are prone to dangerous side effects. Those medicines are avoided in those people. Talking about unpleasant side effects. See, some effects like, say, dryness of mouth or sedation or hyperacidity, sometimes some amount of restlessness, some physical side effects here and there. These are minor side effects which come initially, and the initial side effects they wear off, and the desired effects start appearing after weeks of treatment. So the medicine gets absorbed from the stomach, then it goes to the liver where it is metabolized, then the metabolic products of the medicine enter the bloodstream, they enter the blood-brain barrier, they have to pass. Everything that is in the blood cannot pass into the brain. So it takes weeks for this process to occur. So the dictum that we follow in psychiatry is start low, go slow. Start on a small dose and build up the dose slowly till a therapeutic effect is achieved. Another belief is that a psychiatrist can read a person's mind, and it's something mysterious about it, and they just talk. They don't do much, they only talk. Let me tell you one thing. People almost have this kind of belief that psychiatry is akin to faith healing. Please, no way. Psychiatric diagnosis is a definite process with definite protocols. A psychiatrist first takes a thorough history from the patient and his relatives. This requires a lot of listening, actually, not talking. So people talk and we listen. While listening, a psychiatrist also examines the person's mental status. So we examine the person's consciousness, attitude, mood, thought, orientation, perception, memory, intelligence, insight, judgment. So these are all the components of what we call mental status examination. Just as a physician, or when we do a physical examination, we carry out an examination of the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, gastrointestinal system, nervous system. Similarly, there are components of mental status examination. One of our professors in psychiatry used to always say, the first important thing in medicine is diagnosis. The second important thing in medicine is diagnosis. And the third important thing in medicine is diagnosis. So only after we make a correct diagnosis, we begin with treatment. The process of investigations, the process of diagnosis is not complete without investigation. Sometimes we need to carry out physical investigations. We need to carry out some psychological investigations, which are called psychometric tests. So IQ tests or personality tests or some tests for memory, several kinds of tests, which are done not by a psychiatrist, they are done by a clinical psychologist, right? Now, putting all these things in perspective, so history, physical examination, mental status examination, physical investigations if required, psychological investigations if required, and all this together, an occupational therapist assessment if it is required, a physiotherapist assessment if it is required, all these things put together makes a correct diagnosis. And then treatment is planned, whether this person requires medicines or the person requires psychotherapy, counseling, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, whatever. That is how psychiatric treatment happens. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's a well-defined scientific process. At this juncture, let me tell you one thing. The spectrum of disorders in psychiatry is too huge. The youngest patient I have seen is 1.5 years old, and the oldest is 100 plus. And there are several disorders like psychosis, anxiety disorders, mood disorders, which include depression or addictive behaviors, obsessive compulsive disorders, sleep disorders, sexual disorders, dementias, post-traumatic disorders, eating disorders, issues specific to women. There's a huge spectrum of disorders also related to children and adolescents. Intellectual disability, ADHD, behavioral disorders, autistic spectrum, and a major chunk of adolescent disorders, which also include depression. A special word on child and adolescent disorders here. This population is always brought to a psychiatrist by parents. They don't come on their own. So we need to take into consideration the parental perspective. A parent comes and tells me, my child just does not study. And then we realize that this child is spending 6 hours in school, 3 hours in coaching classes, 2 hours of private tuitions, 3 hours of homework. And a parent says, my child just does not study. So we need to take it in the right spirit. There are several angles to a child's or teenager's issues, right? So it's the family which comes into the picture, then the school, teachers, all the significant people who are handling the child. Sometimes a parent might be suffering from a psychiatric condition such as depression, and that might be affecting the child adversely. So success of treatment depends on all the factors which have to fall in place. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where even a small piece is missing, it's incomplete. So supervised medication, therapy, regular follow-up, support from caregivers, everything is important. Modern psychiatry looks at the brain more than the mind. So new knowledge about neurocircuitry is available. More and more mysteries of the brain functioning are getting revealed through scientific research. So say 50 years down the line, psychiatrists would be talking about genetics, about epigenetics, about connectomics, and several new concepts. There'll be functional MRI scans of people being done to study brains in detail. Newer drugs, newer forms of psychotherapy are already into vogue. So the picture is changing. It is becoming more and more and more scientific, and more awareness is needed. I think this is in a nutshell that I wanted to talk about myths and facts related to mental health and psychiatry. It's a huge umbrella, and I was just discussing with Mona the other day. I said, if I go on talking, probably I'll consume all your time of whatever that is that Zoom has given you. So, however, I'm sure there are several questions which people might be having. So I've deliberately left some areas open to Q&A. And if there are any questions, please.
So, as you mentioned, it's a big umbrella term, and there are a lot of things which needs to be covered. I'll request audience to put their question, but before that, I'll start with one question, because we are in a child development center, and I suppose there are a lot of parents and teachers in our audience. So, doctor, there is always a query. So, when any child should be referred to a psychiatrist when they come with a problem of attention or ADHD? So, or usually a child comes to a therapist or a teacher has a concern when they cannot concentrate in school and they are not studying. So, we have to ask and request a parent. So, what is the ideal time, and what you suggest, and how your psychiatrist medicine can help them in improving their attention?
A very, very relevant question, Mona. Well, let me explain what ADHD is all about in brief first. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a disorder. It's a developmental disorder. It's not a disease. So a child's nervous system is not able to execute some things. So it's a triad of inattention,
Yes.
impulsivity, and hyperactivity, right? By inattention, I mean the child is inattentive, is not able to follow instructions, makes careless mistakes, is daydreaming. So because of inattention, the child invariably suffers with respect to his academics. The child is not able to follow instructions. The child is impulsive, blurts out answers before even he's asked questions, or cannot wait in a queue, unable to wait for his turn, So is very impulsive in his behavior. This can create nuisance to other children in the class, in the family, wherever the child goes. Hyperactivity. The child is extremely restless, fidgeting, squirming in his seat all the time, not able to sit still, not able to focus. So how does this child adjust in a classroom? It's not possible. And why is the child doing this? Not because the child wants to do it. The child is unable to deal with all these issues. There is something called the reticular activating system in the brain. See, when I am talking to you, you are listening to me. Suppose there is background music going on and you want to listen to me, you are able to focus your attention onto me, on what I am saying. But some children with ADHD are not able to filter out these unwanted stimuli. So there's a traffic jam in their nervous system all the time, and they want to then they start responding to what they want to respond to. Selective, right?
Yes.
This is taken care of by some medicines. So these medicines, when the child is under the influence of the medicine, the filtration improves, the child is able to focus, the child is able to be attentive, and when the child is attentive, starts learning what is taught in the classroom, starts following instructions, is well behaved, the nuisance value goes down. And why do we need to treat a child with ADHD? 1, to improve his academics. 2, in order that his nuisance value goes down, because otherwise he keeps receiving criticism all over. And these children typically grow with a very low self-esteem because they receive criticism from all over. And also because of the impulsivity, they might be accident prone. So it's for all these reasons that you need to treat a child with ADHD, and medication is required. We generally do not medicate below 6 unless the hyperactivity is too severe. So occupational therapy really works wonders with these kids. Sensory integration, there are several issues. I'm not an expert, Mona is an expert. I'm sure she will, she has already conducted some sessions earlier. We need to understand here that medicines given to children, now ADHD for example, we do not medicate on holidays.
Yes. And sir, they are so much aware. When they come on Saturday session, they say our attention is poor because today is holiday, we don't have to take
Correct. Yes.
So, yeah.
So it's not, we are not drugging a child. Please don't say that. These medicines need to be supervised. There are some side effects like loss of appetite, which is transient, temporary with some children, not everybody. And they catch up on their food intake once the effect of the medicine wears off. So all these things we explain to the parents, we explain them to the teachers. Actually, school counselors have a lot of role to play when it comes to children with ADHD. They need a lot of support in school. Teachers need to be made aware of these conditions, and it's a joint effort of everybody in the interest of the child.
I agree with you to be with this. Whenever there is a complaint or whenever there is a concern for a child, teacher tries to counsel. There's a whole family atmosphere, therapy, and everything. When it works together, then also we feel a child really needs some medical intervention. A psychiatric medicine is must, and parent has to take care of that. So I agree with you. Sir, we have a lot of questions over here. There is one question. They said, it is said that children are moody. Is it mental disorder and needs medical attention? What do you say, sir?
No, not necessarily. Children are moody, yes. They keep responding to what happens around them. They're very sensitive. Let me put it this way. Children are not moody, they're sensitive. And some children are temperamental. So some children are more prone to anger. Some children are more prone to fear. So it's everybody's temperament after all. So they shouldn't be labeled as a psychiatric disorder. Anything, I'll give you 4 simple criteria. to differentiate between normal and abnormal, the way we look at it. Anything, any behavior, any symptom which is intense, severe, any behavior symptom which is pervasive, meaning affecting several areas of the person's functioning, any symptom or behavior which is persistent, constant, and any symptom or behavior which interferes with the person's day-to-day life. So intense, pervasive, persistent, interfering. If any symptom fits these 4 criteria, it would be a good idea to seek professional help. Simple.
Yes, yes, sir. So yeah, so there has to be a persistent symptom, and then only you can think that you need to reach a psychiatrist. So there's a question: a 30-year-old family history of schizophrenia under medication for the same since more than 5 to 7 years is becoming better with medicine, however, is struggling to cope up with the society. So what do you think?
So rehabilitation in schizophrenia is a challenge because schizophrenia, even if the person's symptoms are controlled, it leaves some scars on the person's personality. There are issues pertaining to coping strategies. Again, an important thing here that needs to be remembered is, if several years a person has been on medication, but have there been any instances where the person stopped his medicine and relapsed? So relapsed schizophrenia again has its own challenges. So we need to remember that in schizophrenia, it's not just biochemical stabilization, but also psychosocial rehabilitation. The person finds it difficult to adjust to a new situation, to a job situation. So they might get a job easily, but they find it difficult to retain a job. Family adjustment, getting married and getting adjusted with a new person, all these are challenges. These are the areas which require some group therapies or some counseling to the person as well as to caregivers. In schizophrenia, this is also very important because if caregivers show a lot of overprotection or a lot of rejection or a lot of criticism, then the outcome is poor. The outcome suffers adversely. So we need to remember that support is required. Actually, there are some people who are working exclusively for care of schizophrenia, and a lot of work, a lot of research is going on in that direction.
Yes, sir, I agree. So it's a totally different condition when we need to treat it. A lot of wholesome approach is required. So there is a question, so sometimes, most of the time it has been seen there is some kind of trigger which is followed by some kind of psychiatric problem or a sleep disorder or a anxiety. So when should you catch up? When there is a trigger, or how do you treat like continuously for that particular thing? Somebody is sharing their personal experience.
No, see, I don't know what the personal experience is, but as a general dictum, let me tell you that there are some people who are prone to a disturbance. There's a trigger happening in a family. Different people get affected differently.
Yes.
Everybody is not affected in the same manner. So people who are prone to a disturbance get affected more easily than others. So there is something within the person as a predisposition and something from the environment which triggers. So it's a combination that we need to look at. However, disorders which are only triggered by an external event generally get controlled faster.
Yes.
So it's important to seek help and get better.
Yeah. So there's a very common question by most of the parents. They say like a child is unable to sit at school or not concentrate, but at home they are doing good, or when they are given some one-to-one instruction, they are doing good. So do they need medication?
Well, see, if the child is going to school and is going to spend 6 hours in school, And if this child is not able to focus and is not able to benefit out of those 6 hours, then what's the point, right? The child needs medication. Why does a child do better in one-to-one situations? Because the child's brain has to struggle with less of traffic jam. Correct? A child with ADHD, I said, has a lot of traffic jam like situation in the brain. So the number of stimuli is less in a one-to-one situation. So the child has to struggle with less challenges. In a school situation, we recommend that the child requires medication in a group situation, especially so if there are some schools which are very strict and they want absolute discipline. There are some schools which do not have counselors. There are several situations we handle, and then the child is blamed, the child is punished, the parents are blamed for a wrong, faulty upbringing, all kinds of things. ADHD has nothing to do with upbringing. ADHD is a developmental disorder. Parents, I empathize with all the parents who have children with ADHD because I know how difficult it is for them to handle a child with ADHD. It's not easy. So please do not blame them. Yeah?
Yeah. So I agree over here, sir. We request parents not to label their child. Most
Absolutely.
of the time I have seen parents saying he's lazy, he's not doing, he's dumb, he can't read. I said, no, not a single child will behave if given a choice to be like that. They can't. The right word is they are not able, they are unable to do something. Please understand them, have sympathy, and try to work towards that.
Absolutely.
So,
Nobody wants to be a bad boy or a bad girl.
yes, nobody wants to do that. And to extend with your answer, when it goes to school, the atmosphere matters a lot. As we, as an occupational therapist, always try to see the sensory part of it. What kind of sensory input is making him uncomfortable, that needs to be evaluated, and then it can be treated too.
True.
So that was true, sir. There are few uh, in the audience, few teachers or someone, they want to talk to you one to one. So can you wait before I have some new norms, and then I can unmute them, and then if they want, they can ask. So uh, uh, teachers and parents, as we have seen, like it's such a big subject, and finally, as we mentioned, there are a lot of things when we discuss about mental health, something which is coming from environment, something which is from within. So we always try and have to improve ourselves within, and we have seen, we have sir who is himself is doing meditation. So on everyone's behalf, what is your opinion on meditation? How does it help in a well-being? It's again a very I think it's a big
I'll tell you in a minute. I will tell you how it was a revolutionary experience for me. In 1995, I suffered from severe rheumatoid arthritis. Severe seropositive rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very, very painful condition, as you might have heard, and therapists who are present here know how bad it is. And I was taking medicines, I was doing intensive physiotherapy, I was doing all kinds of things. Accidentally, I happened to bump into an Osho meditation camp. On day 3, I realized that there is definite improvement in my pain. And I picked up my therapy from that place. I started meditating very regularly, which I'm doing even till now, till date. I went into a complete remission. For the past more than 20 years, I'm off all medicines. There are no deformities, you can see. Nothing, absolutely. I have done a Himalayan trek after that. I have played football with my son when he was young. And I do all kinds of physical activities normally. I'm 59 right now. And meditation is has nothing to do with going to the jungle and sitting like a Buddha and causing hardships to your body. Meditation is relaxed awareness. So there are several techniques which I have learned are from Osho, user-friendly techniques which have helped me tremendously improve my level of attention. And I talked about the PNEI axis, the psychoneuroendocrine immune axis. We are in the COVID crisis right now. We're talking about immunity. I don't think there is anything except meditation which touches psychoneuroendocrine and immune.
My connection is so getting,
Hello?
yeah, so my connection is getting interrupted
Okay.
in between. So yeah, but I'm sure they got an insight on how it is very helpful. And as you said, it's a personal awareness and well-being for any tough situation.
Very important.
And when it very important, and it is, I think as a parent, it is very important what you give your child. If you are giving a lot of positivity and relaxation, I am sure our children will be definitely at a better place. And as we all are going through such a pandemic and challenging time, it is utmost important that how you keep your mental health as positivity possible, so children will not be affected. At this point, to request parents being so much in this pandemic, I've been always discussing, there is a lot of discussion happening around for adults how to take care or not to get affected with this infection. But the time has come where we need to talk about children, and with this new norms, how they will be affecting their own well-being, because it's totally new world for them, and they are not in a position to differentiate what is really happening. On that basis, I have tried compiling few new norms. Especially the parents are requested to go ahead and have that new norms with their children, keeping in mind sensory problem of a child, because we have been getting request or a problem from a parents because children are getting lot of restless and
Just hold on. There's some little issue with your network. Mona, you can start again your presentation. Mona, you can start. Mona.
am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. So as I wanted to discuss that here, is my screen has been seen?
Yes.
Is there a,
Yes, ma'am.
and the sound is also there, Jyoti?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Just give me a minute, sir. So here I wanted to discuss with our parents, the very first norm what I want to discuss is touch. So it has been very difficult for a child with this social distancing norm that nobody is touching them. I sincerely request our parents to give them a good tight hug as a dose morning, afternoon, evening, encourage their child. I think, sir, that is the very first norm I want to say and I want to request our parents. Going over to second norm. Isn't it, sir? Your smile makes my day. And when we see our kids wearing a mask or we are wearing a mask, it is a very hard and tough time for our child. So again, one more request, make sure when you are indoor, when there is a chance, when there is not a risk of much of an infection, have an open environment and share your smile. Sir, you will agree over this point, communication. And I think if the parents will start communicating with their young kid or an adolescent, there will be less chances that they have to reach for a cause of depression to a psychiatrist. You need to understand what is going on with your child, what they are thinking. Not necessarily they will tell you, but you need to understand somewhere. So parents has to sit and understand their child and they have to talk and take out something which is from their within. The fourth norm is physical activity. So keep moving. The corona and lockdown has made everybody so much stagnant and they are just not moving. The other day, even the teachers has said that if they are not doing good amount of exercise, it is very difficult for them to concentrate and they are not getting enough amount of sensory integration. So I again request all the parents, make sure there are good number of physical activity, take them out in ground and play on terrace. It is again very important. Very important thing, we have to be organized, we have to get up daily at the same time, have our lunch at the same time and sleep at the same time. When children are not getting used to their routine and they are not getting used with their parents, I think it is very difficult, and especially our kids who genuinely has some problem every day, the different routine makes them very uncomfortable. Eating, again very important. One thing is very good, that junk food has reduced if we are not eating outside, but healthy eating and physical activity is the crush. And moving towards the last and the very important and that is the last. We have to accept our last norm, where we have to come out, move out with our close friends, with our kids. Its time has come that we're maintaining all the norms of a social distancing and the precautions. Children has to come out in a society before we get very late. And that's what I wanted to share. I'll stop sharing my screen. So if that's the end of our workshop, We are sure we are going to keep again meeting once again, everyone. Thank you so much for being over here. Thank you so much, sir, for their wholesome attitude and the knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you very
Even
much.
us.
Hold on. I have to
Everyone.
unmute, Mona. I have to unmute people if somebody has to ask. I'm
Yeah. You can unmute before
I've done
that.
it.
The official word of thanks to everyone. So we will be able to answer one after another. So can you write? Who wants to ask a question? Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's there?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Premlata, please.
Good evening. Thank you, doctor. It's a wonderful lecture, and it's a full awareness for the people. Our health is more important as well as physical and mental health is, we can complete the health. Health is equal to physical and mental health. Thank you for that information. And being a physio, I just wanted to insist actually. So actually we have to approach the client as a holistic approach, right? So, and a mental illness client, normally they have the lifespan also less, especially for the schizophrenic and cases. And they have a more comorbidity.
Premlata, I'll request you to quickly answer your question in 1 minute because there are other questions and we are already crossed our.
No, my concern is I want physical activities for the adult and the children. The minimum amount of exercise is needed as recommended by the WHO. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, so that goes in my norms that physical activity is.
Yeah, for the kids.
Any other question to Dr. Manoj? Do you have?
No, actually, no. My concern is about the physical health. It's really important because we cannot separate mind and body.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anyone who has raised their hand?
Yeah, it's Shaila Mane. I'm speaking
please.
from Mulund. Yeah.
Yes, Shaila.
Good evening, doctor. I just want to know something that the way people go for a physician, that easily they never go to a psychiatrist. They feel reluctant. Still, there are people they feel reluctant to go to a psychiatrist for any treatment. So, how can we make more aware about this thing that this is also equally important, and how can we increase the mental health? Thank you.
See, that's the reason. That's what I said. The stigma has been there. Now, people need to more and more number of people need to come out in the open and say that, look, I had a psychiatric problem and I was treated and I got better. More and more such people should come out. See, for example, Deepika Padukone, the actress, she came out in the open and said, I was treated for depression and I'm better. So she became brand ambassador for Indian Psychiatric Society, for example. So
yeah, so something else, sir rightly says somebody has to come out and accept. Sir, to tell you, like even psychiatrist is a one more thing, but even for a therapy, parents were not ready that to accept that their child needs therapy and anybody should know. But I'm so happy, sir, since last our 5 sessions, parents with their child has shared an experience how therapy has helped them. So it gives a lot of motivation to other parents to come forward and take note whatever necessary help. The same way, when people will start opening up in public that psychiatric medicine has helped us, I'm sure the more people will agree to take it forward. Yes, sir? Anyone else?
Thank you.
Anyone? Okay. So once again, thank you so much in everyone. We are at the end of our series and we only part, and I'm sure we'll meet again and the things will be much better. Till then, take care. All the best. Wish you all healthy and happy life. Thank you so much and bye-bye.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
thank you.